how do we get the best tomatoes we've ever grown? Because that's really the reason you're growing them at home. Otherwise, you just go to the grocery store.
That's right. And, I guess I have to confess that the people who watch me on Instagram every week take such delight when they see my mistakes. So that's the other thing about gardening expertise is I have to tell people I'm an experienced gardener, but even I can't guarantee absolute success every year. So this is a set of things to help you best succeed. And I think it starts with a few very early things. It's your seed source. Use a reliable seed source. Make sure you know what you're looking for with tomatoes because, there's 10 or 12,000 minimum varieties of tomatoes out there if you get the Seed Savers Exchange yearbook. Whether each of those 10 or 12,000 is distinct or not would be up for a geneticist to determine. And I'm sure that many of these are synonyms, tomatoes that have taken on different names through the years. But there's a lot. You've got sizes and colors and shapes. Do you want to grow tall or short? So as you're ordering your seed, think about your garden space. Think about your hours of sun. Pick your varieties to succeed in the areas you're growing them in. So you've got your seeds. You're going to start seeds, which is fun and it's not difficult, but don't go out in your garden and just dig dirt and bring it in the house and put them in your seeds trays. You want to build quality in every step of the way, and you don't want to introduce issues early on. So tomatoes are a magnet for every disease known to gardeners. They're kind of like roses. So you've got maybe 10 different viral diseases, 15 different bacterial diseases, 20 or 30 different fungal diseases. And if you garden, one or more of them will find you, guaranteed. I always kind of crack up when somebody sends me a picture of a leaf and there's a little tiny blemish on it.
That's the least of your problems.
I'm like, come and look at my garden. It's like, it's all that color right now. So use a good sterile seed starting mix. There's so many good ones out there. I won't go into names, but it drains well, it absorbs water well. Plant your seeds nice and shallow. There's a whole, on my website, there's a whole primer on how to start seeds. But really then another really early factor, understand your weather, meaning when are you going to get those plants out? I like to use this kind of mnemonic of I'm going to plant seed and in a month from that, I'm going to be transplanting to a larger container in a single pot, and then a month from that, I'm going to be putting in my garden. So if I estimate I'm going to have a May 1st plant out date, I work back and I pretty much start my seeds on March 1st. That's for me, Zone 7A, Western North Carolina. Understand what your last frost date is and work backwards from that. Appropriate spacing is something gardeners are terrible at. And it's not just tomatoes. It's flowers. It's everything. You read a packet, it says, space your plants a foot apart. So what do? That looks terrible. Look at all that ground in between. I'm going to plant them 2 or 3 inches apart, right?
I do that all the time. I look at my own packets now, I guess, with botanical. I go, 12? 12? I think I'll do 6. I think that's fine, And you know what I'll say, Craig, is this year, in an effort to decrease, not delete, the amount of disease on my tomatoes. So last year I did about a 12-inch spacing, and I did a Florida weave method. And they just got slammed. I had a great year of production, obviously, but they got slammed. And so I said, you know what, I'll do indeterminate, single leader, 2 feet apart, vertically trained, and prune everything off. And disease has been less. It's not zero, but it has been way less. I finally respected the spacing, and it worked out for me.
Yeah, and the spacing is allowing the sun, which is the best disinfectant of all, and the air, which dries your foliage off, to keep that disease at bay. I think so. Adequate spacing. You want to be able to walk through your plants if you can. You want the sun to shine on as many sides of the plant as it can. Then it's about living with your tomatoes, meaning what does it look like when it's happy? What does it look like when it needs something? Wilting, getting pale in color. Look for the critters. Look for the telltale blemishes on the leaves and get them off. A lot of people say, well, what do you spray your plants with? And I say, well, I don't spray it, but that's my own philosophical decision. Well, I have the time to be out with my tomatoes every day. And when I see those small blemishes, I can remove that foliage. Don't put it in the compost because you'll be putting septoria fungi or early blight fungi. But that, on the flip side of leaves with the blemishes are the spores. And if you leave them on the plant, they float around and they land on other leaves, which is the other big point. Don't water from above. Keep your foliage as dry as possible because wet foliage is a magnet for any disease blowing around. One of the tricks North Carolina growers are starting to use a high tent. And so you're keeping the rain off the leaves, you're irrigating the plants at the bottom. They're having at least another month of productivity before disease hits. So dry foliage means healthier plants. Um, well, don't starve your tomatoes from either food or water. And this is all in relation to how you're growing them. So if you're in the ground, you need to water and feed less. If you're in containers and straw bales, you need to water and feed more. The other thing I've learned is pick your tomatoes when they're kind of half ripe at the bottom. The shoulders are still green. You will reduce the problem that many heirloom lovers have with cracking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you leave an heirloom tomato on the plant, you leave your Brandywine or your Cherokee Purple until it's totally colored, odds are you're going to have either concentric cracks, which go around the stem, or radial cracks, which go out from the stem. Fruit flies get in there, ants. Shortens the shelf life of your tomatoes to practically nothing. Whereas if you pick them half green, half colored, let them ripen on the shelf, it will extend the life of those tomatoes. The other real big fringe benefit is critters that are marauding around won't be as attracted to them. So, we've developed this mystique about the vine ripened tomato, but actually if you pick your tomatoes half ripe and ripen them indoors and blindfold yourself, you would not be able to take.
That's something that I picked up from Jacques, because he's the tomato obsessed of the two of us. We both love him. He's absolutely obsessed. And so he brought that up to me. He's like, yeah, I mean, you really can just pick them at the breaker stage, right? That half red stage,
the breaker stage,
flip them upside down, store them inside. And what I found is not only, of course, the shelf life is increased and the disease pressure's down and pest pressure's down, but it helps me meter out the flow of tomatoes into the home.
Exactly,
it helps me go, oh, I'm not overwhelmed. Because sometimes I'll, like you, I mean, I'll get overwhelmed and I'll be like, dude, do I really need 42 today? And so I'll say, okay, who can I pawn these off on? Or I don't have time to make the sauce today, whatever it is. So it does help quite a bit. A question I have about I kind of want to go a little bit back into the sterile seed mix. So you had mentioned that it's in the air no matter what, right? And so when we say sterile seed mix, some gardeners will say, hey, why bother? Because it's going to get unsterilized the second it goes into the soil. Is that mostly just to prevent damping off, etc., early disease?
It's really about damping off, because most tomato diseases, even though they're present, won't trigger until you get really, really warm weather. So that is the bane of seed starters, is damping off. And it's fairly frustrating because your seeds germinate, they're about 2 or 3 inches tall, and it's like John Bunyan went through and started chopping them off. So you can avoid that almost exclusively by good airflow with your seedlings and using a sterile mix. There's another thing is, take notes. So throughout your gardening season, things are going to happen. And I've found my Instagram lives that I do every week is now like a diary, because I can see my garden. I can hear what I was talking about. I know where the issues are. Gardening is a big continuous improvement project. So you don't want to Einstein it. The definition of insanity, of course, is doing the same thing over and over and over again and then being disappointed because things don't work out. Mm-hmm. So change a little something every year. The scientist in me doesn't like to change too many variables at once, because you want to find out if what you changed is going to make the positive difference. So I'm going to do 5 different things. It works, but you don't know which of those 5 different things work.
Watch the full episode right here and subscribe for more new episodes every single week.